when you have the centralized knowledge, the centralized resources, right? People are more confident in what they're doing. And in this case, compliance, it comes across to the patients in the patient experience. And so we as a company, it's always been at the core of us is we want our providers practicing at their best. And we really want to be at the root of the circle of protection with patients and providers. And so if we can have resources to help with that, which we do. So one of those resources is our instrument management system, right? And there are some little things that as a manufacturing company, we think about that the average person who uses it, we don't know that you necessarily think about it beyond when you're evaluating it, but it's something that you couldn't do without once you have it.
From the basement to the boardroom, from ideas to innovation, you're listening to the Beyond Clean podcast, the central nexus for the people, processes, and products that are pushing the sterile processing industry forward. Each week, you'll encounter diverse perspectives from subject matter experts across the country and around the globe. Frontline technicians, CEOs, engineers, and entrepreneurs with a common goal to help you fight dirty. Every instrument, every time. Whether you are tuning in for education or inspiration, we're glad you're here. Now, turn on those washers and turn up the volume. It's time to go beyond clean.
On this Vendor Spotlight, we speak with Jessica Wilson from HuFriedyGroup. Jessica has been with HuFriedyGroup for 10 years and is currently the Global Business Development and Education Manager, focusing on instrument management systems and dental infection control and prevention. Ms. Wilson works with a variety of settings to support dental professionals to implement efficient systems and streamline compliance programs. Jessica is a graduate of the University of Rhode Island and has a master's degree in public health with a focus in dentistry from A.T. Still University in Mesa, Arizona. She is a member of the Association Board and volunteer consultant for the Organization for Safety, Asepsis, and Prevention, or OSAP, and a certified Team Steps Master Trainer for the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, AHRQ. And one final caveat, she's also a Lean Six Sigma white belt. So that's fantastic. And actually, just this past season, we had an interview on Lean, and I'm really happy to see that. So Jessica's got lots of background in the industry. And when you talk about process improvements and you talk about creating efficiencies in workflows, boy, doesn't that Lean come in handy. So I'm very excited to get into this interview with Jessica, especially on a topic that we have not covered very often on Beyond Clean, which is the dental industry. And we're not going to limit this conversation to just in the hospital, but in all walks of life as it relates to dental practice. So we're going to be right back with Jessica Wilson from HuFriedyGroup.
You're listening to Beyond Clean, the global voice of sterile processing.
Joining us now is Jessica Wilson, Business Development Manager of Infection Prevention and Instrument Management for HuFriedyGroup. And Jessica, I've been looking forward to this interview. Thank you so much for coming on today.
So have I. Thank you. It's good to be here.
So why don't we just start with you telling your story about how you found HuFriedyGroup? And I know I read your bio at the beginning, but give them a little more of your background.
Yeah, happy to share. I started in the dental industry probably 18 or so years ago, and I had just moved at that time from New England, where I'm from, down to where I currently reside here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I just wanted to do something different. And I'm going to date myself here. Do you remember Monster.com?
I definitely do.
So I post my resume on Monster.com and poof, I get a call back. And it was a job as a sales rep for a dental company, a dental manufacturing company for infection control, as an infection control rep. And it was about that time that I realized that there was something special there for me in the industry. And I just had this hunger to learn more. So I looked around for some programs and ultimately decided to go back and get my master's degree in public health. I learned that there were programs out there with the focus in dentistry underneath the Masters of Public Health. And so that's exactly what I did. Within that, I was able to catapult that into a relationship with the OSAP organization. So OSAP is the Organization for Safety, Asepsis, and Prevention. And our whole model as an organization is the safest dental visit. And so I was lucky enough to reach out to the then director, Therese Long, and say, hey, I've got this practicum I have to do for my master's degree. And they welcomed me with open arms. They were super happy to have me work with OSAP on some projects. So it gave me more experience and building my network and relationships within this industry. And it's really helped me out over the years. So I lucked out and I ended up getting into the industry. And immediately upon joining the industry, and you guys probably hear this too with dental people, that a lot of people say once you get in, you just kind of never leave. So I was with that company for 5.5 years. And then I learned about HuFriedyGroup throughout my career. And over the years, the company, as we're going to be talking about today, has really put a footprint in the infection control and prevention space. And so 10 years ago, they started to grow their infection prevention support team, the instrument management system team, and I've been there ever since. And it's been really cool to see kind of the growth that we've had. And in my role currently as a business development manager, I work globally. So I've had a really fun career of travel and education and meeting a lot of people and learning, being a student myself and teaching others. And to continue on that trajectory, we're in a good spot to be doing that with this company.
Why don't you give everybody some background on the organization? I'm sure everybody is familiar with HuFriedyGroup. I've definitely known of HuFriedy for a very long time, at least since I left nursing and went into the instrument repair business over a decade ago, when I finally joined the dark side, as all my nursing colleagues like to say. So can you give a little bit of a background on the organization?
You, like a lot of people, know HuFriedy for the reputation that we have as a dental instrument manufacturing company. And so HuFriedy is over 100 years old and actually started out as a surgical company, which is kind of a fun fact that most people don't know, because HuFriedy has gained such a reputation for being a manufacturer of high quality scalers for dental hygienists. And so, the brand has concentrated on designing, manufacturing, and distributing dental instruments and products. And since the last several years, I would say, as I mentioned, me being here for 10 years and kind of joining the infection control and prevention team, I've watched the company double down on the commitment to supporting dental professionals. And now we are able to say that we have a complete circle of protection for the dental operatory.
So when you say the dental operatory, what are the different environments that you're selling into?
Oh, well, it's, so the suite is oral healthcare, right? So you think of where would you find an oral healthcare provider? So you've got government installations and military bases, hospitals and health divisions, community health, private dental practices, which now we're seeing a lot more private practices that can kind of be rolled up into what we refer to as dental service organizations or GPOs, which are kind of collective business organizations that are made up of private practices. So you also have the education space as well as actual clinical practice.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. That's a broad spectrum. And I wondered, because I'm familiar mostly with HuFriedy from the surgical space, because that's where I had a lot of my personal experience in working in sterile processing. But I also know that everybody goes to the dentist, and I may not even be aware that those instruments are being used, every 6 months when I go in. And so when you talk about that dental suite, that's a variety of different settings even. And I think that one of the things that stands out to me is the way that you work with instrument reprocessing workflows. I got to think on some level that sterile processing, anytime they go into any environment where there is any kind of sterilization going on, they talk to those providers, like you said, when you were looking for jobs, and they said, your dentist said, you should go into dental. Well, if you were a sterile processing professional and you were in the dentist's office, you're probably asking them, how do you sterilize your instruments? And I can tell you, we had an incident in my hometown here in Pennsylvania where they were not sterilized properly, and there was an infection that was spread amongst many of the patients of that practice. And so when I hear things like instrument reprocessing workflows, I'm thinking that you're really closing some gaps, and maybe they're knowledge gaps, maybe they're experience gaps, or maybe they're just process gaps. But either way, it sounds to me, and we're going to be talking about this today, that you're making that a lot easier and removing that margin of error. Am I correct on that?
Yes, we do. And I think you hit the nail on the head, because we try to take what can be seen as a complex process and just make it simple. Because as you mentioned, every single time a patient walks into a dental practice for care, they're not the only one that's being seen there that day. And the thing about dental instruments is they're not disposable, right? So these are tools that have to be used repeatedly throughout the day, and they have to be managed, and they have to be managed in a way that's safe, that also protects the instruments, that's easy for the staff to use. So these are all the things us nerds, as I like to call, that we think about, right? And we have to kind of shine a light on to say, okay, we can help you do this. And this is something that you're going to do on autopilot. We don't want you to think about it, but we want you to make an educated decision about how you're going to manage that process. And that's what we bring our instrument management system in to assist with, is to just create a really nice, streamlined reprocessing workflow.
Yeah, I can see where that, we talk about removing the margin for error. That's obviously going to have an impact on reducing risk. And then you said, we don't want you to think about it. So people are going to do it more efficiently. And then if you're doing it in a consistent way, you're going to be right on the money with compliance. And at the end of the day, it's about taking care of the patient. Like I said, I had this, there was this practice in my hometown, and that was not safe for patients. And so I can see where you're really closing those gaps. And that's really what's going on in the industry, right? You're finding that there's kind of this problem out there that needed a solution. Can we go actually maybe back up a little bit and talk about what that is? I know we touched on it, but I'd like to go in deeper with that state of the market, I guess. Like, what is it that HuFreedy saw that needed to be changed?
So here's what's interesting you bring up. We refer to what happened in your hometown as a breach. And we call it a patient safety breach because something happened to put that patient population at risk for an infection. And so that's exactly the definition of infection prevention in the space that we're in every single day, right? So when you look at that, you and I and the people listening to this podcast, we're more knowledgeable than the average Joe or Jenny, right? Because we know, as you mentioned, maybe sometimes to go in and ask these questions. Really, how are you reprocessing your instruments? Can I see that you have a chemical indicator that's actually changed colors and you're dating your pouches and they're actually pouched, or your cassettes are wrapped, or whatever? And people who have a high infection control and prevention IQ, I mean, again, in this space, you might even meet people who call and interview several dental practices before they can make a decision on where they're going to actually be treated, because it matters. And these types of infection control and patient safety breaches have heightened the awareness of the general population, right? To where now, if they weren't aware, once they see something on the news, they're curious. Why did that happen, and how do I prevent that from happening to me?
Yeah, and I remember, I'll tell another kind of personal story, but we have a family friend, and she works in a dental office, and it's kind of like the practice manager. But I remember we were like, well, are we going to be able to go to the dentist? And we were evaluating all of that. And then all this information came out about aerosols and dental offices being an area where the aerosolization potentially of the virus was like a really big deal. And they had to take all these extra precautions. And I'm not going to say that, they weren't already doing a great job with infection prevention, but boy, did that just really heighten the issue. Would you agree? Have you seen that kind of feedback in the industry?
Oh, absolutely. And, as we talk about this, I think that on a fundamental level, people really want to do the right thing from the clinical side, the clinician professional side of things. Then you also have on the patient side, and when patients go into a medical provider, they just trust that the right thing is being done. So you have this kind of imbalance when you see something like a patient safety breach, and it just kind of disrupts what the professional patient relationship potentially could be, or what it was, because now they're having to question what they haven't had to question before, right? So you asked a question about how do we continue to evolve and innovate in the space? And HuFriedyGroup did a third-party study and looking at the compliance behaviors in the dental industry. And what we found is with all of the good intention out there, no one's ever 100%, right? So there's still room for opportunity. And if we look at the human factor alone, just talking about reprocessing and the fact that this is a repeatable step, someone could be having a bad day and their mind's somewhere else, and we're human, we forget things, right? And so there has to be room for that. And that's exactly what systems are for and checks and balances are for. And in a clinical environment, there's no one person who's responsible for the elements of infection control. I always like to say infection control is a team sport because everyone's wearing multiple hats on the team. And so where you leave off, someone else has to pick up. It's just kind of the way the environment works with managing infectious diseases and really preventing infectious diseases, right, within a clinical environment. And so when we looked at the data that we got back, we said, I don't think it's that people don't want to do the right thing. I think they do think they're doing the right thing. So how do we take the complexity out of this process?
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And it's funny you say that infection control is everybody's responsibility. One aspect of that, even in the surgical environment, is cleaning. And a lot of times it's like, oh, well, cleaning the instruments, that's just sterile processing's job. It's actually not true. There's point of use cleaning. And while you may not be using a detergent in that environment, removing gross debris and taking care of the instrumentation or pre-cleaning is really important. And I would say also that part of the reason they created Central Sterile was to centralize sort of the responsibility and who's going to be the expert on infection prevention. But that doesn't mean that they're the only ones that are supposed to be doing cleaning and sterilization. It's still a team effort. And I can see in the dental offices where everybody, based on just the size and the workflow, has to wear multiple hats. I don't even think you could centralize that responsibility entirely. But you still do need some sort of centralized practice and I think that's what you're saying is by creating that standardization, creating a process that removes human error, that sort of centralizes that infection prevention. Is that what you're getting at?
It is what I'm getting at. And so when you have the centralized knowledge, the centralized resources, right? People are more confident in what they're doing. And in this case, compliance, it comes across to the patients in the patient experience. And so we as a company, it's always been at the core of us is we want our providers practicing at their best. And we really want to be at the root of the circle of protection with patients and providers. And so if we can have resources to help with that, which we do. So one of those resources is our instrument management system, right? And there are some little things that as a manufacturing company, we think about that the average person who uses it, we don't know that you necessarily think about it beyond when you're evaluating it, but it's something that you couldn't do without once you have it.
Well, it's funny because you explained to me how you define a breach. And I also like how you define breach preparedness. So how do you differentiate yourself from the competition in the industry, especially as we talk about that buzzword, breach preparedness?
Well, so we recently, I say recently, and it's been a good couple of years now. I'm so excited about it, but we launched what we call our Greenlight Dental Compliance Center. And also as a company, we have a breach response team so that we can make sure that we are learning from what's happening and creating additional resources. And this is one of those, right? So in our Greenlight Dental Compliance Center, it's an online portal to help manage the compliance programs within the dental practice. So right now it's specifically focused on the dental environment. And within here, speaking of breach preparedness, we have a whole section on breach preparedness to help organizations and most people I work with, actually everyone I work with, when we go through these. So I tend to focus on larger organizations, like I said, the DSOs, GPOs. Sometimes I work with institutions, community health organizations. But at any point when we go through this breach preparedness section, and I've worked with some organizations who have experienced patient safety breaches, and they go, wow, I wish I had this. So it's one of the things that upon being a member, I like to train people on, because it's like that insurance. It's not going to happen every single day. It may never happen to you. It may only happen once. But if it happens, it's one of those panic moments. What do we do? Who do we contact? Why did this happen? And there's a whole litany of things when it comes to healthcare and patient safety that people have to be thinking about when in terms of documenting and kind of tracking. And so our breach preparedness resource and our Greenlight Dental Compliance Center puts all of those resources together. And I've seen it put people at ease to know that we hope that this doesn't happen, but we also know that there's an opportunity to learn from some of these industry breaches that have happened and take that as a launch pad to educate, take more responsibility, utilize the resources, and just utilize the tools that are in front of you. And that's exactly what we're hoping to do.
All right, Jessica, that's excellent. And I know that your company is always innovating. And one of the biggest innovations, and that's really what we wanted to highlight today, are these IMS cassettes. And when we talk about improving that workflow, this is really at the heart of it, isn't it?
I would like to say so. And I'm going to say something, Justin. So you talk about innovation, and I'm on this high right now of innovation. I just was listening to a recording by Jeff Dyer. If you're not familiar with Jeff Dyer, he's a professor of strategy at Brigham Young University. And he's just kind of, he talks about innovation. And I love hearing you say that, because if we break that down, it's questioning, observing, networking, and experimenting is kind of the platforms he goes into. And so when we talk about how are we innovating as a company, we're asking ourselves questions, we're asking our customers questions, we're observing how they work throughout their day, and then we're trying to figure out ways to bring them more and better. And so the IMS cassette system is our industry leading instrument management system, and we've developed this over 3 decades ago. So that's the thing, it's not new, but it does provide an innovative approach to instrument sterilization, reprocessing, and enhances safety and efficiency. And, you know, what's interesting about this system too is it was born out of innovation, because again, being known as an instrument company, we were manufacturing all these instruments, all of these people are using them, and they're going, hey, I want to make sure that if I spend all of this money, how do I protect them? And so there, you know, we say, okay, not only can we protect them, what about training your staff? What if we put color coding in there to help people identify? And I can tell you with the sterile reprocessing teams, and Justin, you may be familiar with this too, with all of the volume of instruments that come through there, or if you get a new dental assistant in any oral health care environment who's not really familiar with the instruments, we want you learning culture, right? So having something like an instrument management system, associating color with kits and being able to have a very clear process on how you're going to manage from dirty to clean and also protect yourself, especially in the environment we're living in right now, that's something. And it's actually pretty simple.
Yeah, it really sounds like you're driving the dental industry forward. And here's the other thing. I went to your website and I watched a number of the videos. So I really watched the IMS cassettes in action, and it really does make things very simple. But you were also just talking about the Greenlight Dental Compliance Center. Do these two work together somehow?
They do. And you actually got me excited again, Justin, because when you watch some of the videos, I think one of the things is our customer reaction, right? So we did a case study with a very large group practice, over 800 locations. And when you're large like that, whether you're large under one roof or what other scale, you're looking at costs, you're looking at operating expenses, you're looking at the happiness of your team and things like that. And we did an amazing case study with this group where we were able to say, okay, wait a minute. What can IMS do for you? Completely eliminate sharps injuries. And Justin, I know you know this, handling sharp instruments, there's almost guaranteed to be injuries because there's the speed of people working with those instruments, of having to turn them around and get to the next patient and get those instruments through reprocessing. And so to be able to completely eliminate sharps from fill in the blank number down to zero is huge from a cost standpoint, a risk management and liability standpoint. Staff safety and protection and confidence was one of the big things. And then how are we making you more efficient? And so they came back and they told us, wow, you did increase our efficiency. We saved on average 8 minutes per procedure. And so when you look at the average dental practice, just the hygiene department sees at least 10 patients a day. What can you do with an extra 8 minutes?
A lot. And if you own that practice, you're going to really like those numbers because there are plenty of other jobs to do.
Oh, exactly. And on top of that, the additional cost of the actual instruments. I know that you know how expensive instruments are, right? And so when you make that investment, you want those dental instruments, you want to maximize the use life of those. They're not going to last forever, right? They have a use life, but if we're talking the dental hygiene department, that's the main driver in the dental practice is getting those hygiene patients in for their preventive visits and then, moving them through their treatments. And so they have to have sharp instruments and they have to be replaced at a frequency. And so if you can maximize protecting those, that makes some pretty happy hygienists and some pretty happy practice owners, right? And then the another benefit to that is training the staff. As I mentioned, there's so much to be said for someone coming into an environment new and just saying, okay, I looked at the chart and I've got, a crown and bridge procedure at 3:00, and they look at their color code chart and they say, I know I need to get the green kit and the green materials tub and I'm ready. And now I can sit down and have my doctor work through with me.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about instruments and having a life, but I will tell you, if you take care of them, they absolutely last longer. So I want to read some testimonials here, and they kind of support what you were just saying. First, about the IMS cassettes, because you did a case study with Pacific Dental Services, and here's a couple of quotes about what they had to say. First, from a compliance manager, sharps injuries were eliminated. And also the time it took to process instruments went down by 8 minutes. So I think you were just alluding to that, and that the instruments came out cleaner. They were sterilized are more sterilized, and it's a better workflow for the office. And that's the office manager. So that really just echoes what we were just talking about. And then Greenlight testimonials. This comes from Dr. Christian Willig, DDS at Orange Door Dental Group. Says joining Greenlight should be a no-brainer. You need these services. It's an easy choice to make for a safe, compliant practice. And that really ties everything up into a bow. These quotes talk about efficiency. They talk about removing human error. They talk about patient safety and compliance. I don't know what else to say other than congratulations on putting not only a great product together, but packaging them in a way that really does drive the dental industry forward. And I can tell you, like from Beyond Clean's perspective, education is so central to that.
Well, I think we know that a lot of our audience, and education is one of the challenges most organizations it's a challenge for them, right? Because depending on your turnover rates, and I'll tell you that I think you know this again, that manufacturers are such a key resource for education and training information, It's free. We are the experts in what we do. And so we want our customers to rely, any manufacturer, I would say that, for the things that we have. Here at HuFriedyGroup, we've got continuing education courses and webinars and trainings. And some of that lives in our Greenlight compliance platform and some of it does not. But you're right. It's combining all of the things. So we can give you the system with our instrument management system. And then we're going to give you the compliance portal. So we're going to bring you into 2020 with infection control. We're going to help you have a digital compliance program. And on top of that, we're going to train you on how to use that. So we have a series of demo programs. People can just go onto the Greenlight website and register for a demo to learn more about it. Once you're a member, if you're a larger organization, you get a coach to help onboard you and hold your hand through that process and just kind of be your silent partner. And then we've got boot camp sessions that if you're a new member and you say, hey, help me work through this, that's kind of your opportunity to say, I want to spend an hour and a half today and actually get things done with my tribe of compliance nerds, if you will. We are here for that. We love that. And so, we try to provide the best experience that we can.
All right. Well, find HuFriedyGroup on LinkedIn and Facebook. Their Instagram is at Hu_Freedy. Twitter is at HuFriedy. That's HU_FRIEDY. The website is packed with resources, and you really described a lot of them, Jessica, but go to Hu-Freedy.com. That's HU-FRIEDY.com. There you'll find a community platform, and we're all about community at Beyond Clean as well, but it's Friends of HuFriedy, so find that on the website. Also want to encourage folks to request a consultation for the IMS cassettes. And that is also on the website, HuFreedy.com/IMS-consultation. You can also book a Greenlight demo if you go to greenlightcompliancecenter.com/S. We're also going to have a link for that that'll take you directly to the form in the description for this podcast. And we're going to have some bonus content. So for those of you that have downloaded the Beyond Clean smartphone application for this episode and you're listening there right now, just click on that gift box for bonus content to get more information. Jessica, you did a fantastic job, and I really do appreciate all the work that you're doing out there in the industry. And again, lots of kudos for innovating, driving the industry forward, and really basing that around a great educational platform.
Thank you, Justin. I think that's the definition of Beyond Clean, isn't it?
Yes, definitely Beyond Clean. That was Jessica Wilson, Business Development Manager of Infection Prevention and Instrument Management for HuFriedyGroup. And what an interesting way to tackle processing, make it more operational. And I am so familiar with HuFriedy from the surgical environment, like I mentioned during the interview. But I guess I never put a lot of thought into the dental suites and just, I've been seeing a dentist my whole life. And I remember that one incident in my hometown, and I thought, how can they not be sterilizing? And that was actually very early into my experiences in sterile processing and supporting departments. And I thought to myself, how do they not know? And I will say, over time, it has really occurred to me that in lots of different outpatient settings, there's just going to be a lot of variability. And what I see with the IMS cassettes and the Greenlight Compliance Center is a way to get more standardization in all these different areas. And it's definitely going to increase patient safety. But it's funny, so many of our listeners are sterile processing professionals. And it gets me thinking, how many of us, when we do go to the dentist, ask how they clean and sterilize their instruments? And I'm betting there's many of you who have done that or do that. So it's great to see some instrument reprocessing workflows being improved with tools like the IMS cassettes, and then wrapping that all in with education. The training is so key, and giving them resources to reference is only going to help with increasing compliance. So just as a reminder before we wrap, you can go to hu-freedy.com and you'll find lots of information. You'll actually see the videos that I referenced, IMS testimonials and Greenlight testimonial videos. Find them on Facebook and LinkedIn, and the Instagram is at @Hu_Freedy. Twitter is at @Hu_Freedy. And on that website, you can request a IMS consultation. Like I said, we'll have a link right there in the description for this podcast. And if you've downloaded the smartphone application, there will be bonus content there as well. Love Jessica's passion today. All right, that's going to do it for this week's show. But as a reminder, you can help support Beyond Clean by subscribing on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify, or downloading that smartphone application with bonus content for iPhone and Android. We'd certainly appreciate a rating and a review because your feedback is important to the show. And if you have any topics that you'd like us to cover on a future episode, just send an email to info@beyondclean.net. Thank you so much to Jessica, and thank you for listening to this Vendor Spotlight on Beyond Clean.